The next, how would you describe the current free expression situation in your country? Why don't we start with Urshad, since you're in an interesting one.
That's the nicest thing that's been said about me in a very long time. So speaking of not being liked. You would think that in the land of the free and the home of the brave, that freedom of expression runs rampant, particularly in a society that is frankly driven by media, both information and misinformation. And I'm certainly not going to sit on a panel like this and suggest to you that we don't have the freedoms that we claim, that the government and patriots of the United States tell you that we do. Yes, we do. Let me not draw any, victim-driven equivalencies here. The real point that I wish to make about freedom of expression in America, what we're experiencing in the United States today, by and large, is such a polarization of opinion that often suppresses dissent within particular camps. So, for example, we have, everybody knows, something called Fox News, which many people around the world love to, smear as being hopelessly right-wing. But what people don't realize is that the solution, quote unquote, to this kind of monolithic perspective is what has also emerged on the left as the Fox News of the left. In our country of the United States, we have something called MSNBC, which is as left-wing, and viciously so, as Fox News is accused of being viciously conservative. So, for example, we have a very popular program on MSNBC. Remember, this is the left-wing equivalent of Fox News, hosted by a man, very articulate, nice-looking, called Keith Olbermann, who at the end of his program has a segment called The Worst Persons in the World. And he lists and rails against three people, one of whom is always a host on Fox News, as the worst person in the world. Now, why do I make such a big deal of something like this? After all, it's only entertainment. Makes people laugh, makes them cheer, makes them angry, and then they switch the channel, right? The problem here is that the culture of argument and expression in America has become very, very hateful, in which even people who claim to be pure and righteous, meaning not right-wing, engage in the same demonization of the other as they accuse their enemies of doing. And I use the word enemies very deliberately because we no longer have rivals. We no longer have adversaries. We now have enemies. Very early on, after Obama was elected, where a lot of people said, now that we have a man in office who knows how to actually create one full sentence and who tries to find common ground and whose mother was white and whose father was black and therefore, builds bridges between and among communities, now we have somebody in the White House who will be able to take a position that will bring, rhetorically, verbally warring factions together. So far, that has not been the case at all. In fact, I would argue the culture of demonization in America has become even worse since President Obama took office. Because now, the left wing claims that he's not left wing enough. The right wing claims that he will never be right wing enough for their tastes. And therefore, both camps are even angrier than they have been before. And what that means is that rather than having intellectual honesty, or at the very least, a situation in which one can disagree without being disagreeable, without being hateful of the other, instead of having such an environment, we're getting the opposite. And that, of course, means that dissenting voices within the left and within the right, voices of nuance, voices of complexity, completely drowned out. And when they're not drowned out, it's because they are being called heretics and sellouts and traitors. And that, in fact, Ursula, is the reason that I founded this leadership program at NYU in conjunction with the European Foundation for Democracy, a global leadership program called the Moral Courage Project. Moral courage being the willingness to speak truth to power within your own community for the sake of a greater good. It's really about fighting cultural conformity, intellectual intimidation, and of course, self-censorship.
I wanted to talk about freedom of expression in Mexico for women. I think the media is doing that circus. I think that pretty much all over the world, in different ways, of course. But because in Mexico we also have this, this right wing and this left wing, and they're all fighting, and there's the enemy, the terrorists. But I want to go back to what happens to women when we speak out. What happens to female journalists or TV anchors. I had a TV program for 5 years called Esta Boca es Mía, which means this mouth is mine. And it was basically an analysis. There's a Mexican say in rural areas in which women, when they talk, they said, when they are explaining that somebody didn't defend herself, they say, she didn't even say, esta boca es mía. She didn't even say, this mouth is mine. It's like she just kept quiet. So I called that, my program was called Esta boca es mía. And it was on Televisa, which is the main TV monopoly in Mexico. Pretty famous program in my community in Cancun. We talked about everything. From the feminist point of view, we talked about everything. And then one day, the owner of the TV station called me after we talked about female condoms, what I did in a program. We were speaking about the president, we were speaking about everything, abortion, and then I took a female condom and I put it in my hand and I say, wow, this is huge. So, and we were talking about this. I had a sexologist in the program and I said, do you think this is comfortable for women? We were talking about how expensive they are and how they are not available in Mexico. So I asked the audience to try them and to let us know if they are comfortable, if they thought that we should ask the government to give them away as they give away male condoms, because they're really, really expensive.
Did you complain about the price? Because
of course I did. They're like $4 in Mexico. That's a lot of money. It's what a lot of people makes just for one day of working, so it just doesn't make any sense. Well, sometimes it does, of course, to pay. Let's not talk about that. So anyway, that afternoon we finished the program and we were like, oh, this was a good program, it was interesting. Because we knew it was a good program because of the cameraman. He was just like going, God, he took notes and things like that. So I go to the TV owner's office and he goes, Lidia Cacho, you're fired. And I'm like, I'm fired. You don't pay me to do this program, so how can I be fired? I do this for free. And he goes, you said these obscene things. And I'm like, obscene? You have like soap operas, Televisa soap operas, all day. They are really obscene. He said, yes, you put a condom for a woman in your hand, so you're fired. And they actually took me out of TV. I use this example because it's the hypocrisy of all the media in my country. I do write in the main newspaper, El Universal, every Monday and Thursday. And my column is one of the most famous columns right now because I'm a martyr now, because I was taken to jail and all that. But I can tell when people read my column if I speak about politics and I'm serious, like serious issues. But when I talk about domestic violence, sexual violence, or any other issue that has to do anything to do with women's advancement, of the right of girls to go to school, or the right of women not to be saints and virgins and the best of them all in society, they don't read me so much. So there's this act of having women in media in Mexico, but just as long as you play the game. And I don't play the game, and that makes it harder for my editors to let me be in the media that are not related to being a traditional Mexican, nice, quiet, pretty woman with fake breasts now. But Anyway, so I guess that's just one issue that I would like to talk about.
Amazing.